going to go straight into today's session, which is an introduction to Jewish spirituality and prayer. And that's what we're starting right now. Again, if you've missed the earlier classes, you are more than welcome to join us on the recordings of these classes. I really think you can benefit from them. Go to youtube.com/Jewish Gardens, where you will see the playlist at the top of the page. It's called Playlist. And look at the playlist, the one called Introduction to Jewish Spirituality and Meditation Through Prayer. Just look at the previous classes. You got so much time on your hands in this quarantine. You can really become familiar with the language of Hebrew through my system of Hebrew word diaries. We're developing Hebrew word diaries. We've got 15 words already in our Hebrew word diary. And the latest word is up here. What word is that? Word number 16, actually. We learned it yesterday. The other words are on the other side of this page. Oops, sorry. The other side of this page is where we did the first 16 words. And I encourage you to take these words as we learn them through the one prayer that we're learning and write them on flashcards, so that when you put them on flashcards, the Hebrew on the one side and the English translation on the other side, so that you go through the Hebrew side and by going through it many, many times in one day, to 5, 10, 15 times in the day, you do it once before you have coffee in the morning, once after coffee, once before lunch, once before you take a nap, once before you go swimming, another time before you take a walk, another time before you go to bed. And that way you do it a few times in a day, you just go through it, and that way slowly but surely it's going to be burned into your memory. So at that time, every time you're going to see that word, that root in the prayers, you will know the meaning, the translation, as well as the meditation of that word. It's going to transform your prayer experience. It's going to make it more spiritual. So Ron says on YouTube, with spirituality gives prayer existence. Okay, I think you're saying, Ron, that spirituality gives the prayer its existence. Good. Warren is more spiritual. You pray in Hebrew if you can, absolutely. And I guess you're saying that from personal experience. Elaine, isn't the case that the letters themselves express divine will? Certainly they carry the code, Elaine, that's for sure. Okay, good. Let's go straight into it. We are continuing with the finishing. This is exciting. We're finishing our first prayer today. How exciting. We took on one prayer, and that is the blessing that you make before you eat bread. Baruch atah Havaya Elokeinu melech haolam hamotzi lechem min haaretz. That's the blessing. We all know that blessing. None of us don't know that blessing, I'm sure. Hope. And that blessing we now understand. Instead of reading that as like some mindless reading ritual, which has nothing to do with the food that I'm about to eat, and why are we making everything so religious? We've just made this into a very personal, very meaningful, very spiritual experience, because we explained the meaning of Baruch atah Havaya Elokeinu melech haolam hamotzi lechem min. That's what we've explained in the past 5 or 6 lessons. And today I'm going to go into the last word to see where that goes. Remember, I'm developing this course as we speak, so your input is highly appreciated. Very, very important to me to hear your feedback, your input. If I'm going too quickly or too slowly, too deep or too shallow, please give me your feedback, and your questions especially inspire me to understand which direction I need to be going in. The final word of our prayer right now is, and just to show you the word that we introduced yesterday, was this word. Hamotzi lechem. Motzi with an aleph, like matzah, means to find, as opposed to matzah with a hey, which is the bread that we eat on Passover. The matzah with an aleph at the end is to find. So whenever you see that word, if it has a hey at the end, then it means the bread of faith, the bread that we eat on Passover. But if it's got an aleph at the end, like this word, then it means to find or to remove, and that's what we learned yesterday. Let's move it forward. The last word we learned yesterday was min. Min is from. We also said it means the manna. I didn't add it to the word diary yet. But the last word that we have is aretz, and this is another very interesting word that we're getting introduced right now. The word is aretz. Now, a lot of these letters we're already familiar with, because hopefully by now you've downloaded the app on the Google Play Store and on the App Store. It's called the app is called Read It in Hebrew. Here it is, RIIH. Read It in Hebrew, and that way you're able to learn the letters. Because remember, this course is about learning how to read Hebrew. Number 1, learning how to understand Hebrew, one prayer, and number 3, learning how to meditate, to spiritualize our prayers. So, for the purposes of reading Hebrew, let's do this quickly here. The aleph is the first letter of our root word right now. The first letter of our root is aleph, that's a silent letter. This is what it looks like, and it has no sound of its own. The second letter is the resh. The resh has the rounded back of the head, rounded for resh. If it had a dent at the back of the head, it would be a daled. So the second letter is a resh. And the third letter, we've learned this also, is the tzaddik. The tzaddik, which looks like a twisted pretzel for tzaddik, is this letter. Now, this is one of the 5 letters that when they appear at the end of a word, like in English, letters, capital letters. In English, in Hebrew, you have letters at the end of a word. 5 letters change their format just a little bit. It kicks its kickstand down. It becomes a tzaddik like this. It kicks that leg down, and it becomes a tzaddik, right? A final tzaddik. So this word then would look like this in our Hebrew word diaries. It's eretz here. Eretz, which means the land. When you see that word, it means land. So hamotzi lechem min haaretz means who takes the bread out of the earth, out of the land. Aretz means land. Anytime you see that word, and it's very, very frequent, you'll find that word in our prayers. Aretz means the earth or the land. There is a very deep Hasidic interpretation to this, but I think it's a little too deep for this class right now because I don't want to lose it. I think it's going to be a little confusing, so I'm not even going to go there. But anyways, that's the meaning of our 5th word right now. Of our 17th word in our Hebrew word diary, which is aretz. Okay, now, I want to apply this now to explain a few, to use this as a donut, to say, look, we've learned the template. Baruch atah, Havai Elokeinu, Melech HaOlam. Right? That's the template of the blessings, and we all know that that's the template of the blessings. But now what's going to happen is that we're going to use that to be able to interpret and understand the suffix of all of the blessings of food. So when it comes to food, you got hamotzi lechem min haaretz. Those are the last 4 words. Who takes the bread out of the earth. And then we know by now the meditation. We've learned it yesterday. We've got the meditation nice and clear. It's a beautiful meditation. We know what to think about before we eat bread to turn it into mindful eating. So we've now made spiritual and meaningful the blessing before bread. But what about the other foods? Let's talk about them as well. I'm going to move to the most important blessing of the tree. The bread is the most important blessing of the earth. Okay, now this is just a bit of an introduction here. We were commanded by God to bless Him for the food that we eat. Ve'achalta ve'savata uveirachta, and you shall eat and you shall be satisfied and you shall bless God, your God, who provided you with all of this, right? So that is a biblical commandment. To bless God after we eat food. It's very important to understand this. It's a biblical commandment to bless God after we eat food, but there's no biblical commandment to bless God before we eat food. That is a rabbinical commandment, to bless God before. Why would the Torah not have mandated to bless Him before we eat the food? Why only after we eat the food? And it's a fascinating explanation. Just to illustrate with the story of a tzedakah collector, a charity collector, who came to a rich man's house during a blizzard. And he knocked on the door, and the wealthy man, who was a generous man, he sees the rabbi at the door. He says, "Rabbi, come on in. It's freezing cold outside. Let's warm you up by the fire. Let's talk." And the rabbi says, no, I want to talk to you right over here on the doorstep. He's like, "Rabbi, you sure? It's freezing cold outside. It's snowing. It's a blizzard. There's a wind." And the rabbi says, yeah, absolutely. I want to talk to you right here outside. He says, "Okay, Rabbi, it's freezing. Hurry up. What do you want to tell me?" And he says, there's poor people before Pesach. They don't have money for food and drink. By the way, I have to tell you, just a quick tangent. I saw a video this morning of the Kimcha de Pischa, of the Mois Chitim, the money for wheat that we distribute before Pesach to poor people in Israel. They are distributing food to tens of thousands of families that don't have money to buy matzah and wine and provisions for the holiday. But during the quarantine, how do you do that? So they set it up in a most ingenious way where nobody gets out of their cars. It's like a drive-through donation area where people drive in their cars. They pop the trunk open, and the volunteers with masks and gloves and staying 2 meters from each other, they fill up the trunks. Each trunk gets filled up with all the needs for Passover: meat, wine, eggs, matzah, whatever they need. And they fill up the trunk. They close the trunk, and the car moves out. So it's quarantine distribution of the matzah, the Pesach needs. It's amazing. So beautiful to see the care and concern that we have for each other, even during these difficult times. So the collector, the rabbi, is standing outside the home of the rich man during the blizzard, and he tells them about all the people that are hungry and they're cold and they don't have the needs for Pesach. So the rabbi says, okay, Rabbi, can't we talk about it inside? He says, no, I need an answer from you right here, right now. So he says, okay, how much money do you need? Here you go, I'll give it to you, no problem. Later on, they come inside, and the rich man says to the rabbi, he's like, why did you need to talk to me about that outside? Couldn't we talk about it inside? He says, yes, the rabbi says, if we spoke about it inside, it was warm and cozy. You wouldn't be able to empathize and feel the cold and suffering of the poor people that I'm raising the money for. That's why I felt it was more conducive to your understanding their plight. If we were sitting by the fire on a beautiful couch, sipping hot tea, then you might not be able to identify with their problems. And I'm using that story to illustrate the reason why the blessing to bless God, the mitzvah to bless God is after we eat the food, not before we eat the food. Because after we eat the food, that's when you're satisfied. And when we're full, that's when we tend not to need God. When you're hungry, before you eat the food, that's when we all turn to God. When we're in trouble, when we're hungry, when we're afraid of the coronavirus, that's when we turn to God in prayer. But when we're full, when we're satisfied, each man under his vine and fig tree, when we're cozy and all our needs are taken care of, that's when we tend to become apathetic and indifferent to God. That's when we have the biblical commandment to turn to God, even when you're full, to recognize the bounty that God has given to you. Before you eat, you don't really need a biblical commandment to tell you to turn to God, because that comes to us naturally. So anyways, now that we understand this, we're soon going to switch over to understand the first paragraph of the Grace After Meals, which is also very famous. Many of us know it, but don't understand that. We read it as a mindless ritual, reading in a foreign language, but we're hopefully going to take possession of that and make that our own. But it's the blessing before the food that I've been learning with you in the past few weeks. And the blessing that we did so far was the Hamotzi blessing. Because how are you supposed to bless God? Like this. Anything, the basic premise is that you have to recognize where the food comes from. You can't take something without permission. Right? You can't take something without permission. So if God has, if the food belongs to God, then you have to ask God for permission. And that makes the eating mindful, by the way. It makes it purposeful. It makes it such an eating that you're eating not for your own stomach. You're eating for a purpose to serve God, right? That makes it more mindful. So you're supposed to praise God like this. You thank God for the food that grows in the ground. There's a blessing for anything that grows on the ground, and there's a blessing for anything that grows on the tree. But the most special food that grows in the ground gets its own blessing, and the most special food that grows in the tree gets its own blessing. What is the most special fruit of the ground? That's bread. What's the most special fruit of the tree? That is the grape. That is the grapevine, which makes wine. And that's why we make the blessing of Borei Pri Hagafen. And that's what I want to do with you right now. I want to go through the blessing of Borei Pri Hagafen, the suffix. It's got the same introduction. Baruch atah Havaya Elokeinu Melech HaOlam. That is the introduction. We all say it at the Kiddush. And hopefully you're going to say it at the Passover, say it next week. But the finishing words of that blessing is Borei Pri Hagafen. 3 very important words that we're going to be adding now to our Hebrew word diary. But just before we do that, I want to add this other word here. The word was aretz. Aretz. Or eretz. Which means the land. Okay? And then today's new words is going to be Borei Pri Hagafen. So very quickly we'll go through this, and this is going to get a lot easier right now, because by now we already know that the bet is the letter, the root of this next word of our Hebrew word diary is bet. If it has a cough drop, then it's a bet. No, not a cough drop. If it has a button in the middle, then it's a bet. If you have the button in the middle, it's a bet. If it doesn't have a button in the middle, then it's a vet. It's vacant. If there's no button, it's vacant, it's a vet. If it has a button, then it's a bet. The next letter is the resh. We just did it in this lesson itself. And the third letter we also did in this lesson is as an aleph, borei. So if you read this word like this, the root is borei, a very, very important word here. Borei, right? Borei, which means to create. This word is a fundamental word in Hebrew, and you'll see why in just a moment. What is the first word of the Torah, folks? Does anybody know the first word of the entire Torah? The first word of the entire Torah is Bereshit, bara Elokim. In the beginning, God created heaven and earth. In the beginning, Bereshit. Bereshit, bara. In the beginning, bara, God created. In the beginning, God created. So the word bara is exactly the same word as borei peri hagafen. Bara means to create. So you'll right away start to recognize that word, not only in the context of the hagafen blessing, but you'll also start to recognize that word in the context of the first word of creation, the first word of the Torah, Bereshit bara, the second word of the Torah, Bereshit bara Elokim, in the beginning created God. Now, you'll even notice that the word Bereshit also has the word bara in it. The first three letters of the word Bereshit is actually also bara. Let me show you something interesting. So this is the word Bereshit. If you look at that word, you'll notice it means in the beginning, right? But if you cut the word in half, then it becomes, remember in the Torah there's no vowels. You can read it as Barashit. He created, and this is in Aramaic actually, he created in 6. In 6 days he created. Now what's really very interesting is that God only uses the word bara in the first day of creation. On all the other days of creation, we don't find that word of creation. And our commentaries explain that to mean that it was only on the first day of creation that God created ex nihilo, something from nothing. He actually created on the first day, everything was already, all of matter was created. And it was on the remaining 5 days that he created the form out of the matter. Right? Because we've learned in the doctrine of perpetual creation that God first has to create something out of nothing, and then he forms it into the something that it becomes, into specific trees or plants or spiders or metals or gases or liquids or whatever, solids, right? So that actually comes out of the matter which was created on the first day. So every time you see the word bara, you know that you're talking about creation. And that's the 17th or the 18th word in our Hebrew word diary that I'd like you to add in there. Whenever you see the word bara, you will know that it's talking about creation. And that's actually the blessing that we make on the fruits of the ground and the fruits of the tree, in addition to the blessing that we make on the wine. For the wine, we say borei peri hagafen. That's the ending of the blessing, the pre-blessing before drinking wine. Borei peri hagafen, which means he creates the fruit of the vine. When we make a blessing on anything that grows in the ground, like a potato or a pineapple or a strawberry or a banana. Do you know that bananas grow in the ground because it's not a real tree? It's a weed. It has no bark. It's not a tree. It's a weed. It grows in the ground. So anything that grows in the ground, you make a blessing. Borei peri ha'adama, who creates the fruit of the ground. Borei peri ha'adama. And anything that grows in a tree, like an apple or a pear or anything else that grows in the tree, you'll make a blessing, borei peri ha'etz, who creates the fruit of the tree. And with that one single word, we've just introduced so much understanding and familiarity into our lexicon that we can understand the meaning of this word. When you make a blessing on food, you now know Baruch Atah Havai Elokeinu Melech Haolam Borei Peri Ha'adama, who creates the fruit of the tree, who creates the fruit of the ground, who creates the fruit of the vine. We now are starting to have a familiarity with the blessing, and I would love to hear from you folks about how you feel about this as I wrap this up. I would love to hear how you feel about this. Are you gaining familiarity? Is there a challenge? This is from my perspective. Remember, I'm creating this course from scratch. How do you feel? Are you connecting? Warren Alec, are you understanding? Is this connecting with you? Are you able to spiritualize your prayer experience? I would love to hear from you. Please share with me here, Warren. I would love to hear your thoughts about this. Julia, you'll be pleased to know I totally understand and relate to what you just said. Blessing before we eat. I still struggle with my other questions. Sorry. Great. I'm glad you got the concept of the blessings before we eat. You're struggling with the other questions, which you spoke about earlier. And Julia, I want you to know, I completely respect your candor. I validate your position. We are all human. And I do not expect you to suddenly experience a hallelujah moment. I think it would be great if you did. But I know you as a rational and a logical person, and you struggle with theodicy, which is being able to justify evil, apparent evil, with an allegedly good God. That's the question of theodicy, the age-old question. I don't expect this to be solved in an instant or a day. But you know what? You have what to think about it. And I know that you're rational and honest with yourself. And you'll take these ideas, which I've shared with you, to be able to evolve your thinking and your ideas. And maybe one day you'll agree with me, hopefully. But we're all in this journey together. And we all struggle. You know, a friend of mine once said to me, he's a rabbi, that when he lost his father, he had to reinterpret everything that he tells everybody else of his constituents, of his members. And now he has to really believe on a whole new level what he tells his members, which is very interesting. You know, it's a das moment. It's Chabad. It's Chachma Bina Das, idea, understanding, and realization. We're constantly pushing the envelope, making something more personal and more deep. We're constantly evolving our familiarity and our understanding of all concepts and ideas. And each and every encounter and challenge that we face is a new test to our faith. Because what I was comfortable with my faith yesterday, it will be able to withhold or to withstand the storm that I'm experiencing today. So whatever problems that we face, they continue to challenge our perceptions and our foundations. And sometimes even a rabbi can have his foundations shaken by things that happen. And we all struggle with this. We all of us struggle with this. And that's why I just want to validate your position there, Julia. But I do want to thank you for your question, which was a terrific question. And it's always great to have good questions. That's very, very important. And with that, folks, I think I'm going to call it a day here. I didn't hear from Warren. Let's see the comments on Facebook. Robin, what prayer do you say when you eat a meal but no bread? Okay, it's a good question there, Robin. What prayer do you say when you eat a meal but no bread? So just like I explained, before a meal, after a meal, only if you ate bread at the meal, will you say the long grace after meals? After meals, right? That's the Hazan. You'll find the long grace after meals published in the Siddur. If you have a Siddur, if you don't have the Siddur, you should definitely buy it. You can buy it right here from the office. Just call Ashley, 561-624-2223. Call here at the office. And you'll notice that the Grace After Meals is published in the Siddur after the morning service. It's on page 80, it's on page 90. You'll find the Grace After Meals. Now, if you didn't eat bread, then after the meal, you'll say the short Grace After Meals, which is on page 97. However, if you ate one of the following, if you ate wine, you drank wine, or if you ate any of the 5 grains, wheat, barley, spelt, oats, and rye, not in bread form, but like in cake form, without a dough. Cake form. So if you drank wine, or ate the 5 grains, not in bread form, or if you ate any of the 7 fruits of the land of Israel, which are wheat and barley, that's already covered in the grains, grape, which is covered in the wine, or dates, pomegranates, olives, or figs. If you had any of the 7 fruits of the land of Israel, then you'll say the middle blessing, after blessing, which is on page 96 in the prayer book. That's after. But before a meal, if it's bread, you say Hamotzi Lechem Min Haaretz. If it's wine, you say Borei Pri Hagafen. If it's fruits of the earth, something grows in the ground, you say Borei Pri Adama. If it's something grows in the tree, you say Borei Pri Ha'etz. And that pretty much covers it. So I hope that answers your question. Warren, I still haven't heard from you. Curious to know how you feel about this course, if it's connecting to your prayer, making it more meaningful or not, from the back of the bus. Susan Benson, thank you for an awesome morning filled with knowledge and inspiration. I always appreciate your positive energy, Susan. Thank you so much. Folks, with this, I'm going to call it a day. We'll see you guys tomorrow. Oh, Stephanie, I feel the study completes a gestalt. Awesome. It makes it clear to me. Let's keep it going. Stephanie, what is a gestalt? Pardon my not understanding what that word means. What is a gestalt? I don't know what that means. Would you please tell me what that means? Yeah, I feel this study completes a gestalt. It makes it clear to me. It sounds like something good. I like that. Let's keep it going. That's terrific. Stephanie, you specifically are someone I know that you're very spiritual, and I know that you want to enhance your connection. So for me to hear this comment from you is very encouraging, and I'm very grateful to hear that. Thank you. What I'm doing is apparently working, and that is really good news. I'm very grateful to hear that comment from you. Thank you so much. Susan, have a great day. Thank you, Susan Pelosi. Thank you very much, everybody. I want to also encourage everybody, a quick thing before I let you go. There's something very special going on today. It's happening online. There's the international contest of the kids. The kids are having this international mitzvah contest. They've studied all the mitzvahs, all the 613 commandments of the Torah in all of their details. And they were supposed to have an international convention in New York the past 2 weeks. However, it was canceled because of Corona. So they're having the whole thing online. And I wanted to just invite you to join us for that. If you want to join it, it's happening today at 2 o'clock at thechidon.com. Today at 2 o'clock, you can watch it. It's an international game show of all the Jewish kids around the world. 2 of my kids will be featured there, Shalom and Etzi. And if you want to watch them and support them, it's happening today at 2 o'clock. Go to thechidon.com. That's THECHIDON. Thechidon.com. Would be lovely if you were able to join us and watch it at 2 o'clock today. See you later, folks. Oh, more comments coming in. It's as if you see 4 lines almost connected, but you know it's a square. Oh, wow. Thank you, Rabbi. It's as if you see 4 lines almost connected, but you know it's a square. So it's coming together. That's what it sounds like, a gestalt. All right. Thank you so much for that, Stephanie. Really appreciate your comments. Guys, hang in there. Oh, Warren, finally. There you go. Very good study this morning. Thank you so much. And Elaine says gestalt is the big picture. Gestalt is the big picture. Okay, good. Then you're getting the big picture. It's coming into focus. That's great, because before I felt that people walking into shul, they just didn't have a clue what's going on. And my goal is to give you an introduction to Jewish spirituality and meditation through prayer. So definitely, if I'm hitting the gestalt, I'm doing the right thing. That's good news. Thanks. Bye. From Andy. And I just want to say to you, Elaine, how do you bless the food that has mixed ingredients? That is a major section of Jewish law. We'll come to that eventually. Talk to you guys later. Have a great day. Shalom.